So we're preparing to live stream the webinar.
Is. Oh.
All right, it looks like on YouTube we're live, and now
Errol, are you ready? Excuse me. Reagan, are you ready?
I am ready.
making Phyllis the host again.
Okay, so I'm going to start the webinar, and that will allow people to join. And you can start the meeting.
Very good. Thank you. Welcome all to the March Town of Clifton Town Council meeting. I understand that we will be joined by the mayor sometime during the meeting, so we will go ahead and kick off with the quorum that we have. Again, in keeping with the resolution passed nearly a year ago now, we are meeting electronically, and residents and guests have been invited to register for the meeting and also to speak when we get to that point in the agenda. First order of business to approve the meeting minutes from last week. Amanda?
I circulated the draft minutes for February, and I received some very minor revisions from the mayor and also for the treasurer, were mainly to clarify very small details.
Very good. Any comments from council on the meeting minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Minutes are approved.
All in favor?
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for that, Steve.
If that's all I have.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Next is a report of the treasurer, Marilyn.
Thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get this out to you by at least yesterday, but I was definitely under the weather yesterday. So you may not have had a chance to look at it, but I'll review the highlights and the main points. And if there's any other questions, later, feel free to ask and we can address them. This is the report for the period ended February 28th. 2021. Our cash balances as of February 28th are $1,320,463.11. And the update on our COVID report is that we did receive the subrecipient agreement. It's been fully executed, and we have that document back, and it did extend the use of the existing grant funds through June 30th. I believe that in the last meeting, it was clarified that they would like to get any excess funds that may be remaining at the end of the grant period returned by May. So we'll want to I'll clarify that in the next meeting, because I don't recall that I saw that in the actual amendment agreement, but I will clarify that. And given that we do have still a considerable amount of money left, I'm suggesting that it would be good to give consideration to any additional needs the town might be able to identify. I know some of the other towns have included things like special air filters for their office spaces. And I'm not sure how complete the air system is at the community hall, but if there is I might be able to get some information from where I work to see what they're putting in our office there. But they do have filtration systems that are designed to, clear the air of any infectious kinds of things that companies are using now. And if you think that there's a need for that at the community hall before it reopens, that might be something to look into as a way of utilizing some more of those funds. That was one idea that I'd come up with, but that's an update there. So maybe we can address that as we're looking at the budget coming up for
Yeah,
next year, just as a segue. I mean, I know it's more related to this year, but okay. So our expenditure to date of I'm sorry, bumbling here. I'm trying to read it off the computer. Our total expenditures for to date came to, I think, after I deduct the payback, so we have about $39,041 that we've spent year to date. And that means that we currently would have a balance remaining of $10,700. So given that would, I don't think there's anywhere we're going to spend that just by doing what we've been doing. So that's why I'm suggesting that we would make sure that there isn't any other needs that we have to utilize that money for. They are expecting new funds to come out with the new legislation, which we should be maybe hearing about this next month. And the town would probably get some more funds to use, but possibly they would have new guidelines of how those funds would be used, what it would be used for. But that's to come.
Okay.
Okay. Other notable items that you haven't heard about. One thing I wanted to note is that for the litter control grant that we got of $935, I believe we have to expend those funds and then report those funds out for the by the fiscal year end, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll need to check the contract on that and plan ahead for that. Other things, let's see, that you haven't heard about. We have received.
Meryl, for Virginia, is the grant year always July through June?
Yes.
I actually did the report for this last time, and it says grant year, grant year, grant year all over the website, but it never actually says what months it starts and stops. So that's good.
Generally,
Good
the state state entities or state government or most corporations in the state, or at least where I work, people I work with in human services, generally it's always July through June.
Okay.
Okay. So a big update is we have started getting our B-poll taxes in. We've received response from about 20 businesses. We've received about $20,479 in B-poll taxes. And we should be receiving the remainder of them this next month, or this month in March. So I'll be reporting on that again. We sent out about 70 B-poll notices and application forms. Many of them are not within the town, obviously. They're just services that are provided to people in the town or businesses in the town that need to have their, that we get B-polls from, usually smaller dollar amounts. We paid a double 2 months of bills for our trash pickup. I'm gonna start doing that through the credit card, which will make it a little bit easier and timely. A lot of things we're using the credit card for now rather than cutting checks. And so that's the highlight of the major activity without going into too much detail. Are there any questions on that before I go into what's coming up?
Anyone?
Okay. So what we're going to be working on this next month, or this, I should say this month that we're in as of yesterday. I will be scheduling the audit with our auditors. I've been preparing, I've sent them out all the accounting records, and I've been preparing various things that they've been asking for. And then we should be able to schedule with them within this next month for when they're going to be coming. The other big thing that's coming up is our FY22 annual budget process. And after we approve the financials that I've submitted for tonight, I'll be sending out the budget process email with the documents and the information about how to prepare the budget and what the time flow is. And so the action that we would need to take tonight, if we can, would be to actually schedule the meetings when it will work for people, so that when we do send out that packet, we can notify people when we're planning to have the various work sessions. So what I've proposed is similar to what we did last year. Last year, it seemed to work for everyone to try to have the meetings on Wednesdays rather than Tuesdays, so that it could be a different day. But we can change it. But the time frame flow of having 2 or 3 meetings before we would need to schedule the public hearing would be within this kind of time frame as far as the weeks. So I'm proposing the Wednesday, March 24th for work session 1, then Wednesday, April 17th for work session 2. Work session 3 will probably not be needed. So it's only suggested at April 21st if it's needed for any last minute review or anything. Then for the notice of the public hearing, it needs to be 7 days prior to the actual public hearing at the regular meeting. So I would send that out by no later than the 26th of April. And then the public hearing would be in advance of the regular meeting on May 4th. So that's just a proposal for consideration so that we can start getting the plans made. And I can include that when I send out the mailing regarding the budget.
Okay, I noticed that Bill has joined us.
Glad you're safely home.
Yeah, it's kind of hairy out there, but made it back. Go through the dates again, just the dates. It was
Okay.
March
March 24th, which is
24th.
and they're all Wednesdays with the exception of the regular meeting, of course. So it would be March 24th, April 17th, and then only if needed, April 21st.
April 17th?
That's a
Saturday?
Saturday. Must be 14th.
Oh, did I goof that up?
Not if you meant Saturday, but if you meant
No, I didn't mean Saturday, for sure.
April 14th and April 21st. Okay, so the deal is that we'd have to have something meaningful to ponder on the 24th, which is in 3 weeks. Are you sending out requests to people? I mean, what are we going to look at on the 24th?
Oh, I'll be sending out the regular packet of information that I send out. So after we approve the financial statements that we're reviewing tonight, then I'll be sending out that. I'll be sending out the process for the for how a budget is done. And whatever else I normally send out.
Well, I mean, the process is you send out a proposed budget, filling in the numbers, and you compare it to last year's, and you compare it to the run thus far this year, usually like 9 months through the year. And those
Yeah.
are the pieces we look at to go, does this look reasonable compared to last year? Because 90% of the stuff is the same as the prior year. And the only question is, did it go up? Did it go down? You know, and here we're going to have big questions about revenue
Yeah, I
and
know.
maybe costs. Okay. So sort of like, what does the world look like and what would you fill in? There's no reason you can't do that in advance. And then input from the groups. Otherwise, we have to go, how much does the history committee want? How much does the committee on the environment want? We'll have to guess if we don't have input, but we won't have input unless you ask.
But
and
that's
then
what
if there's-
normal, that's what I normally ask for in the first mail out. For
First-
ask them to give me the input by a certain date, and then that way I can use that to develop the final thing that we're going to be reviewing on the 24th.
Yeah. So, you know, the word needs to be out that if anybody wants funding, they need to let us know. That doesn't mean they'll get funding, but now's the time. And if there's anything new, one of the things that comes to mind is this, these informational signs for the park. That'll be a new budget item that we don't have right now. So please put a space in for that. But if there's anything new, we need that in there. And then we need to have it all a week ahead of the 24th, like by the 17th, because over that weekend, I would, and I assume the other council members would read it through and go line by line and go, oh, this looks fine. I think this needs to be a little higher. This needs to be a little lower. Because otherwise there's nothing to talk about on the 24th. And I definitely do not want to come in on the 24th and have everyone look at it for the first time. That is not very efficient. So that is all doable, but process-wise, that's what you need to do, is have something out to us with all the blanks filled in by the 17th. And we will undoubtedly have some things where like 80% of the stuff will be good on, but 20% will have follow-up questions that we can ask. But we can't get to that point unless we have something to work from.
Maybe we should move it back to the 31st then. Because to the 31st of March, the first one.
Yeah.
Because I haven't gotten any feedback. I usually have a hard time getting the feedback. And
Well, you
also because of everything I've got going on at work.
It sounds like you haven't asked yet, so that's
I
probably
haven't
why.
sent, right, I haven't sent out the request yet because I was going to send it out with the February financials.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have feedback.
I wouldn't be able to send something out by the 17th so that you had it a week before. So, okay, I agree. I think we should move it to the 31st so that I can have it sent out by the 24th.
Yeah, that's Fairfax County spring break though. So I don't know how many people are going to be gone that week.
Oh,
I would also request that it not be on spring break, although I guess ARB would ordinarily be meeting that week as well.
the week of the 31st?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Now you're talking about April 7th.
Okay, April 7th. 7th, and then the 14th, we'd have to move everything back a week.
What is the expectation for these meetings? Is that the entire council is there? Are there other committees that are part of this budget process?
It's a public meeting. Anybody that can come that wants to. In practice, sometimes Tom Barton comes to tell us to finish up so he can go home. But otherwise, it's not well attended. So it's generally just us, but it's open to anyone who wants to come. And it's a work session. It's public. It'll be on Zoom. And it's very much, you get your pencil out and you go through line by line each of the items and go, is this number look okay? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? Does anybody have any questions? And you can see that if we don't have good input and people aren't prepared, it can take like 6 hours to do that, which is unbelievably terrible. So therefore, the idea should be everybody should have gone through everything, and we should go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any questions? No, 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 no. Ooh, what about this? Ooh, what about this? And there's like 8 things that get discussed. So that's what to expect. But it does require all the council members to have done their homework and have looked at the proposed budget. And it also requires that we have meaningful input, because otherwise you're just looking at a number and you have no idea. It's just like, how does this compare to last year? How are we trending? That sort of thing. And then looking at on a macro level, how are we doing with regard to revenue coming in versus expenditures going out, obviously, as we're trying to balance the budget as best we can. So that's the process. And that's why dates are one thing, but we have to have something useful to go through. And it has to be a session at which people are ready to roll up their sleeves.
One thing I would ask is that the council members that are actually, part of the committee structure, if they can help to get the feedback from the committee chairs on what their budgetary needs or requests would be for the next year, that will really be helpful. Because we haven't really gotten very much response back. And I would think that would be helpful. And maybe if the members that are actually involved with the committees could also reach out and just follow up. I certainly will send whatever feedback we're getting, I'll send it out to you as we get it before the meeting. So I think the most difficult part's probably going to be estimating what the revenue is going to be.
Well, that's why what's going on this year is so important.
Yeah.
Because I honestly have no idea. Some of the businesses actually look reasonably busy, others not so much. So I don't know how that falls out. It's obviously less, but how much less, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so good information on that will be paramount, because we're going into budgeting this year will be, I guess, the first year where we're really going to be trying to figure out what to do here.
Mm-hmm.
And, possibly significantly reining things back.
Yes.
Marilyn, when you send out the budgets, will you include just the previous year, or is there will we be able to look at numbers several years back?
We haven't normally gone back several years.
Can you, in the budget you propose, you give the proposed number for this year, the number for last year, i.e. the year we're in now?
You mean the budget number?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes,
you
I
would
can
have.
give you that.
What I'm saying is what you typically provide would have the proposed budget for next year, $1,200, and what the budget is for the current year, $1,100, and then a run number on where we stand to date for that line item.
Yes, that's the standard.
$100. Okay, now, for prior years, you could send out just the budgets from the prior years. I wouldn't make the spreadsheet different from the way you've been making it. But if people wanted to look at line 49 from 3 years ago, if you sent the budget from 3 years ago, they could pull it out and look at it. So I wouldn't create
Okay,
any.
that's easy to do. Yes, I can,
Yes.
that's easy to do.
Yeah.
So, so you can just let me know how many years of the budget you'd like for me to send out so that you can review that. Whether it's just, 20, FY 20, because we're in FY 21, that will be there. Or whether you want to see 2 additional years to kind of get a sense.
We all want to start with 2 additional years. Yes.
That sounds good.
That should be
Okay.
plenty.
Yeah,
Two additional
one
years.
non-COVID year and a COVID year.
Okay,
Yeah, Lynn, all those budgets are on the website under Town Council Finance. It looks like we go back to FY15.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you.
So probably no need to send those, Marilyn, as long as they're all good to go there.
okay. If anybody has a hard time finding it or needs for me to send it, you just let me know and I'll be glad to do that.
All right, what about these dates? What are we gonna do with that? It sounds like we're gonna be starting kind of late.
Yeah, I think that, I think to be able to have it a whole week in advance for you all to have time enough. I think that the 24th, I think it would be hard for me to get something out to you by the 17th. It's probably not enough time. So I think we should move the first meeting back to the 24th. And then the 7th, I would guess, would be the second one. So that we still would have time enough to do a third one if it was required and still make the timeline.
Okay, when would the first meeting be?
So the first meeting would be the 7th of April, which would allow me to send it out. Well, because you guys didn't want to have it in the last week of the month. So I would try to send it out even before. I'll still try and send it out by the 24th.
All right, April 7th, April 14th, and April 21st. Those are the 3 dates.
Right. If that works for everybody.
All right, that work? Okay,
Nothing else going on.
yep, and 21st if needed. I mean, these are Zoom, so it's not as
What
big a
time?
burden.
What time do you want to do it?
Typically is the same time as council meetings, 7:30.
Okay.
I'd be glad to start earlier if folks want to, but that's just me. Especially the first one, maybe the first one.
7 o'clock.
Fine with me.
Yeah, good here.
Yeah, that works.
All right, 7 o'clock each meeting. Okay. That's the plan. You'll get the requests out.
Yep.
So where are we? You presented your report, but we haven't.
We have not.
Yes. It just still needs to be acted on, approved.
Okay. Are you done?
Yes, unless there's any other questions.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented and the scheduling of work sessions for next year's budget on April 7th, April 14th, and April 21st, if needed, at 7 p.m.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. By the way, I would have said this at the beginning of the meeting. Daryl Poe will not be joining us tonight. He's got his personal matters that he's addressing. Okay, citizens' remarks. We have numerous, with 2 being the number. One is, and we can start with that. Matthew Pritchard wanted to speak about a bike lane through town. Matthew, do you want to tell us your thoughts?
Yeah, hi, Mayor and council members. Thanks a lot for letting me speak tonight. Appreciate it. Nice to virtually see all of y'all. My wife and I just moved here a few months ago, and we love the town. We love our home, and we love being able to walk to town on Clifton Road. But one thing we've noticed is, boy, there's a lot of shenanigans with the drivers on that road. They are a little nuts, and it's so much fun to walk to town and be able to walk home, and it's not so much fun to feel like you're in a live action game of Frogger with the cars right there. I've seen a lot of cyclists through town. I saw the cityscape plan that was put together, and I was just curious, and maybe over long term, maybe short term, there were plans to look at bike lanes to let cyclists go through, maybe up and down Clifton Road, any kind of working with Fairfax County to expand that, to allow for travel, to encourage more cyclists back and forth. And then, of course, the selfish reasons, so my wife and I can come to town, have some wine, and walk in a protected shoulder and not worry about being struck by side view mirrors and whatnot. Didn't know what you guys were doing with that. Since we are new, maybe it's already something that's been discussed, but just kind of wanted to bring to the town council's awareness. And then I have a second issue, just real quick. And I'm not sure whether it's Fairfax County or maybe you guys can let us know, but our drive is kind of right across from the old elementary school and just south of it. And I'm not sure if it's right on the border of Clifton Town or where the county begins, but there's a big washout where there's a culvert. And I noticed that the sediment underneath the road is really starting to wash out. Looks like it could be kind of dangerous where a car could accidentally go over, or it might kind of undercut and the asphalt will fall down. So I don't know whose attention to bring that to, whether that's a town council issue or Fairfax County, and maybe y'all can direct me to the right person if I do need to speak to someone about that. So again, thank you, and nice to meet everyone, and thanks for your time, and thanks for listening.
Thanks, Matt. I'll pick up the road issue. I interface with VDOT and the county as necessary to get repairs done. So I'll take a look at where that is and report it.
Well, while we are on that subject, on Chapel Street, they have repaved the whole thing, but there are two huge holes that either riprap or something has to be put in there, or the honey truck is going to go over. I mean, it's going to miss that corner, and if that wheel goes off the edge, we're going to lose both the edge and the truck. So if you're talking to VDOT, I'd appreciate you talk to them about that too.
Okay, I'll have a look.
It's right on the curve. You can't miss it.
Okay.
And in terms of the bike lane, Matthew, from my perspective, I'd love to see it, but the width of the road, unfortunately, is such that I don't think we've got any room. With the plan that we currently are talking about with the streetscape, we're even narrowing the road in town, and VDOT was concerned about that. So I don't see how you add more space to it, but I agree with you that it's a problem, and there's another communication that we have pretty much on the same issue of getting a sidewalk on that side of town.
Yeah, we'll address that in a minute.
Okay.
It would certainly be wonderful to see VDOT and the county work together to put a bike lane in or some sort of trail up Clifton Road, but it would have to be something that would be additional and would probably be perhaps a significant scope of work. But I think we'd be very much in favor of that. There are bike trails all over the county and lots of bikers in Clifton and these narrow little roads. So we'd certainly like to see that improvement. I know people have looked at extending the bike trails out to Clifton. Has not happened yet. I don't know if that's a funding issue or an easement issue or what it is. Thoughts on that, council members?
Just to clarify something for Matthew, we don't control our own roads in Clifton. It is VDOT that controls it. So everything that Reagan is doing with VDOT is because we don't control it, VDOT does.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, can I say something? Clifton Road is a scenic byway too, and there are scenic byway rules with VDOT and the Commonwealth that as long as you're designated as scenic byway, you cannot widen the road. So if it would need to be widened for a bike path, that would involve some fairly major changes and conceivably going to the legislature to make those changes. Unless, as you mentioned, you did bike paths, on the side of the road or in other places as there are in the county, through parklands or perhaps through some open spaces.
Well, I know we'd love to see that. But it's probably, as you note, not a trivial undertaking to get it done. Okay, thank you, Matthew. We'll put that on the list of things that we'll try to pursue when we can as the opportunities open up. And along that exact same line, we also got a communication from Marilyn Stoney, who for the 5th time has asked the town to install a sidewalk between the railroad tracks and Clifton Creek Drive. Thoughts on that?
Knowing how hard it is, given that I've been proposing just a short walkway going to the post office in downtown Clifton and haven't been able to get that successfully done for 5 or 7 years. Yeah, I'd love to see it happen too, but I don't know how you get VDOT to move, and I don't know how you get the easements for it. And now I don't know where the money comes from.
Agreed. And I take it that there's no one who's opposed to that conceptually. I know. I think everybody thinks it would be wonderful. I think the major issues when we've looked into sidewalks are that VDOT told us that now it's either 6 or 8 feet of width is the required standard sidewalk. I've never seen such a thing, but they keep changing the widths. And if you were to have let's just call it 6 feet to be, conservative and make it as small as possible, 6 foot wide sidewalk after separation from the roadway, where would it be? Like, you couldn't do it in front of Trummers, obviously. I don't know. So you probably need 15 feet maybe of easement that you would then clear and pave and put sidewalk in. I don't know. And as Steve knows, going down to the post office, we found a way to have a paved surface as opposed to a sidewalk, because a sidewalk's a whole special thing. So I don't know what to do with that. We certainly would like it to happen, but it's non-trivial. I'll add, I hear the same thing on a regular basis from Clifton Heights down to Primitive Baptist Church, because at that point you've got a sidewalk. I hear that as well, and it's the same issue. I don't know where you get the 15 feet. Even if you had the money, I don't know how you do that, but certainly that desire is out there. And I think one of the issues is if it's VDOT, you can't just put a 2-foot wide concrete strip right along the edge of the road. I mean, you might as well, it's like shooting ducks or something. People walking right next to the road, so they don't allow that, which is why you need the separation, maybe guardrails and other things. So it is difficult, and we're actually fortunate to have the sidewalks that we have now. So to Marilyn's request, we agree, and it's something we all want. If a group of people wants to meet and review the VDOT requirements and see what they can come up with, I think people would be very open to a proposal. But to the extent it's a request for the council to make a sidewalk, that's not something that's easy to do. If it's an offer to create a group to look into it and come back with a specific proposal, I think we'd be very open to that.
I think Marilyn would participate in that as well, at least according to her letter.
Yeah.
I did reach out to Fairfax County, just to inquire after we got Marilyn's note. They tend not to do projects in incorporated towns. So for the county to come in and do a sidewalk project, I wouldn't see that happen. So we would have to work with VDOT. I do have a contact for the bike and pedestrian program, so we can look at that and see if there's anything that they might do on Clifton Road, Matt. And I've also, we can continue to develop with VDOT what the possibilities would be in town.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps with a crosswalk at Clifton Creek to get you over to the floodplain side, and then improve that side of the street, which might be a little bit more doable. You still have to cross, but I think that if we could connect the bridge to the Acacia Lodge parking lot, we would keep people away from traffic much more than
there. If you're on the Acacia Lodge side and we own the Pink House, there I think we could actually make something happen, from the bridge up to there. I agree.
Especially given the push to get people to park at the floodplain, that side, it might not be as much residential traffic, but it's certainly where we want to be pointing people towards in terms of parking. And if we can't offer a safe passage to town, then it's really not a doable solution. But
and this is more the other side. The floodplain side is much better as far as getting from there to the town than the Clifton Creek side. That's a little more difficult, but neither is perfect. Reagan, I think what's needed is somebody who has expertise in this area to somehow get them to come out and walk around and tell us what is the art of the possible. Not here's what we'd like to do. Oh, that's hard, but like, what could you do? What we want to do. We want to enhance pedestrian access and safety from Clifton Creek and the floodplain up to the tracks. And then, at some point, bring them back for another visit, Clifton Heights down, but just Clifton Creek, floodplain up to the tracks. What is it you could do? And they might say on the Clifton Creek side, nothing. There's just nothing you can do there except get them to the other side. That should be your focus. But who knows? Somebody with the right eyes that knows what they're looking at, I think could give us a pretty quick read. And then we wouldn't be flailing around as we have been for some time on this. If there's a plan, I think we can find funding to do it if there's a plan to actually do something real. That's the question. Okay. Well, those.
Yeah, I got the communication from Jennifer. I don't know whether you want to raise that now or wait.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's a communication. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a communication. And Jennifer raised the issue with me about the trucks, the dumpster trucks, clearing out the dumpsters from the restaurant from, in her case, Villaggio, but it's also happening over at Trummers as well. But in her case, they're apparently showing up at 4 a.m. And so a dumpster truck comes at 4 a.m. and you can hear every one of the empty wine bottles coming out of the dumpster going into the truck at 4 a.m. This is a noise ordinance issue, it seems to me. And I looked at the noise ordinance. I was surprised that we have a limitation in there on heavy construction equipment being used between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. But it looks like it's only limited to construction, which I was surprised about. And I'm not sure whether we have something else on dumpsters, but if we don't, we need to do something about it, because that's unacceptable.
Steve, we don't have something else. And if you recall, if you were attending the meetings when the noise ordinance was being drafted, there was substantial opposition by almost every business in town to including dumpsters, on the basis that the only time they could get their dumpsters dumped was between 4 and 6 a.m. in the morning. So, I mean, I hear it where I am. I certainly understand, Jennifer's point of view. And I don't mind, maybe things have changed in the couple of years since we did the noise ordinance, but it is true. That's when the dumpsters get emptied, because that's when there isn't the traffic and cars around allowing them to get emptied. So, we can certainly get together another committee and readdress this issue, but that's the reason it's not in the noise ordinance.
Yeah, I do remember that, Kathy, because I was also one of the people
right.
who
That's what
that ordinance. But I thought we had a limitation in there. I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, I mean, you know this well.
Sure.
The pub seems to have been able to manage this. They do not, their dumpsters are not dumped at 4 a.m. or at 6 a.m. or at 8 a.m. They get into the middle of the day. And I think that Trummers has handled it, that they're not getting dumped very, very early in the morning. The only one that I'm aware of, and I wasn't until Jennifer talked to me about it, is this 4 a.m. thing over at Trummers. And maybe we just ask Trummers first to talk to their service company. I don't know which service company it is, but 4 a.m. is unacceptable, it seems to me, when you're right next to a residence.
Why don't perhaps the town council could inquire of the businesses what time, what dumpster emptying service they're using, and how often a week, and what time they're having the dumpsters empty.
Yeah,
I can tell you,
I'd like to do that.
Yeah, Trummers is definitely being emptied at around 4 a.m. because we hear it when it comes with the glasses crashing. So I don't know that that's changed so much, but it certainly is worth a try because people are using different companies. Who knows?
Yeah. Amanda, can we get a note from the town to the? Well, I think there are only 4 users of dumpsters. I think it's Trummers, Villaggio, the pub, and the cafe is 4, and then we have one at Clifton House. I think that's it. And if we can just send a note to them asking them for information on what service they're using and when have they contracted for it to operate, so that we can at least know what we're talking about.
Sure.
Thank you.
If I could add, I think that there's also an issue with delivery trucks that come and they park right beside her house and of course right in front of ours, and they'll sit there with their generators running and make all this racket and noise from that. And they'll come early apparently, even before they're delivering, and that's why they're sitting there so long. And then of course, when they do deliver, if they're not on the opposite side of the building over by the railroad tracks, all the noise related to taking things out and slamming doors and all that is right there in our face all the time. And many times it's when we're waking up in the morning. You know, it's just, it feels like you're in an industrial zone when you live here.
Well, let's start with getting the information, and particularly, I suspect it is particularly of importance at Trummers and at Villaggio to get the information on who these companies are and when they are doing their work, because there is a concern about being in a residential area and the noise that is being generated. And let's see what happens. Let's see what their response is.
Okay. We'll get the information, and when we have the information, we will review it. All right, that's citizens' remarks. That moves us to committees. Planning Commission.
We had one application on at our last meeting, and that was an application for a use permit for office commercial use at 12642 Chapel Road by Philip Cotticelli. His business is Cotticelli Group LLC, which provides public relations. Mr. Cotticelli was moving offices at this location from Suite H to Suite 10, and his hours of operation are going to be 8:30 a.m. till 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. The Planning Commission recommends that the application be approved and that the approval note the applicant's new location in Suite 10, and the applicant will be using 144 square feet and should be allocated one parking space.
And is this effectively an amendment?
No, it's a new use permit. We don't do amendments.
We don't do them. Okay.
No, because the information changes on the permit from date to date. In this case, it's a new location, it's different square footage, and I think there's a slight difference in the hours too, so.
Okay, and it's 12642.
Right.
And is it a particular, what is the name of the business?
Cotticelli.
Cotticelli Group LLC.
Group, okay, group, all right. All right, I will make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Planning Committee to Planning Commission to approve the use permit for Cotticelli Group LLC at 12642 Chapel Road.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. All right, is that it?
That's all the business that we addressed at the last meeting.
Understood. Okay, zoning administrator, you want to give us an update on what's going on?
Sure, I'll just give you a quick update on 7184 Clifton Road. According to the county, there have been 2 stop work orders issued for the construction of the single-family dwelling and for the retaining wall. The builder is in the process of working with the county to resolve those issues. But from the town's perspective, there's really nothing for us to look at or act on until those issues are cleared up with the county. So we'll just keep monitoring the situation until something changes.
Okay, and now to be sure, there are a number of open issues with the town with regard to both non-compliance with the certificate of appropriateness and outstanding issues with the Planning Commission, as I recall. Is that correct?
Right. Yes. Okay. So what I was just talking about as far as the stop work orders, that would really apply to the Planning Commission, who's keeping track of what's going on. The builder needs to show that he has obtained all the permits and passed all the inspections. Royce is at the meeting tonight, and he can give you all a much more detailed report on the compliance or lack thereof with the certificate of appropriateness. I'll leave that to him.
Okay, and the point I'm making for the council is that this long running saga on this property, we're currently in a timeout because the county has 2 stop work orders on the property. But once those are lifted, we still have a number of outstanding issues ourselves. So we're a long way from being there. I don't really understand why or what's going on or how come this stuff isn't getting resolved, but there's not much we can do until the owner resolves the issues, and there are a number left. So can expect this will be going on for some time in the future. Okay, anything else you want to touch on, or is that all you want to touch on for tonight?
That's it. I don't have any updates on commercial use permits.
Okay, Architectural Review Board. Is Royce is available on, as I understand it? Yes, there's a picture of him.
Royce's.
Yes. He is muted though.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Okay.
It's good to see everybody. It's been a long time.
Yep.
ARB had a meeting in February, the first one for a few months. So things must be coming back to life. I'll do the easy ones first. We reviewed a application for an addition on the Byrne residence on on Water Street. He complied with all the requirements of ARB and received approval for that certificate of appropriateness. That was the easy one. The 7184 Clifton Road, as you were saying, is an ongoing saga. And I reached a point of frustration with him. I've been up on site a couple of times, and there's a retaining wall of sorts along the driveway in the front of the house that has been done with wood. The ARB did approve a change in his initial certificate of appropriateness to change that retaining wall from a stone-faced retaining wall to this wood under the condition that it was going to be a tiered system of 2 walls that were less than 36 inches in height. The key number is 36 inches in height because anything over 36 inches requires permits, and he did not want to get a building permit for that. So after it got installed, he put up a vinyl fence on top of that wall to act as a guard rail. This prevents people from falling over the wall and tumbling down that hill. We told him that needed to be metal. The ARB's opinion was that be a wrought iron metal type rail because it would be less visible through the trees. So he then took the vinyl fence off and put up a pressure treated wood railing. And I pointed out, I said, well, this was supposed to be metal. So he said, yeah, I wanted to ask to see if the ARB would change that to wood. So I have concerns that the entire wall system won't pass code just from my experience in construction and architecture. But what I wanted to do was get the ARB opinion as to whether they were going to require metal as the original certificate required, or if they would be willing to do wood, so that if he got approval from Fairfax for the wall, that he wouldn't put up one type of rail for us just to come back and say, that won't work, you need to do this. I wanted to give him that answer. But in working with him at the meeting, I asked a simple question: if he had a permit for the wall, which he said he did, but as I let him talk longer, he admitted that he did not. and that he had submitted an application for a permit and had paid a fee for that application, but did not actually have a permit. So at that time, I said, well, until you display that you have a permit for the wall, the ARB is not going to take any action on your request. And it's because I don't know what he's doing. As you know, this project has been going on for, I think, over 3 years, maybe longer than that. And he has never displayed any willingness to comply with the requirements of the certificate of appropriateness. So until we actually know what kind of wall it's going to be, what it's going to look like, it didn't make any sense for us to decide whether the rail on top of the wall should be wood, metal, or whatever. So we did not vote on that. His request also included the front door, which has 2 side lights, which we have accepted the side lights, even though that wasn't in his original certificate of appropriateness. But the existing side lights have a faux stained glass look that appears to be a vine with some leaves that go up the side light. And we asked that that be replaced with clear glass. He came back and said that that would be a real problem for him, and it would sacrifice the energy efficiency and the stability of the door assembly. We decided not to really listen to that because sidelights can be replaced. There are times when people break windows and they have to be replaced. It's not fun, it's not cheap, but it is something that we required. So because of the lack of compliance on most of the other issues, we didn't make a vote on that as well. So at this time, what he is supposed to do is when he gets approved drawings, and I emphasize that I wanted drawings that show the approved stamp from Fairfax County that tell us what kind of wall that's going to be along his driveway, as well as the wall in his backyard. We will then take action on what type of guardrail is appropriate. But we didn't see any reason to get into it until he displays that permit. So I understand that he's got a contract on the house. I don't know if that's going to add motivation. He seemed to think that his permit was pending approval sometime this week, which my experience at Fairfax County with the e-file system that's been adopted since COVID, he'll be lucky to see it this month. So we're in a holding pattern on that project. We also, and this was something I initiated, we talked about windows. I have for some time found it a little antiquated that the town of Clifton requires only wood windows. I went back and looked at the architectural guidelines that were adopted by the town in 1997. Jim Rico had written those when he was chairman of the ARB. So that's 24 years ago. And they clearly say that windows and doors should be wood. I have worked in some other historic districts where there are exceptions to that. So I made a few phone calls and did a little research between Old Town Alexandria and also my windows supplier that I use frequently. And I found Old Town Alexandria ARB guidelines pretty interesting because the city of Alexandria has a wide range of architectural types. Some are in the old historic district, some or on the outskirts, which aren't really older buildings. Some are government buildings. Some have absolutely no architectural quality towards the historic district at all. And in the town of Clifton, there's some similarities where we have the low-lying areas, which I would call the village. And then we have the upper outlying areas of Clifton that would be areas like Clifton Heights, Frog Hill, even Choo Choo Hill up Clifton Creek Road and Wesley Tyler Road, and a couple of properties that are on Newman. There's one or two on Dell Avenue. So there are structures that in the past, the ARB has looked at in a different light than the structures that are on Chapel Road or Main Street or Chestnut Street, because those are typically, those buildings are the ones that were considered as contributing structures to the historic district. And their size and scale is pretty common within the low-lying area of the village. Whereas the houses that are in Frog Hill or Clifton Heights and what have you are larger and a slightly different architectural style. So it seemed to me that we had some variations that could be considered when we talk about the actual requirements of materials. There's also some commercial structures in town. The ones that I pointed out were the Clifton House. To require wood windows on the Clifton House would be kind of silly because the Clifton House, the existing windows are metal. The Clifton store, the big window in the front is metal. And then you could also look at the firehouse, which is not of the same size and scale of what most of the structures are in the village. So there's some different architectural types. And then one of the other things that Old Town did that I found interesting was they distinguished between front elevations close to sidewalks, additions to the rear that weren't visible within 25 feet of any street. And they also talked about alleys. Now, we don't have any alleys. So I brought up the conversation with the ARB to start a discussion as to whether we could or should consider alternate materials that are more sustainable, especially with consideration of windows or doors. And the point is not to make construction easier within the town, because our goal is to maintain the architectural character of the town, but it's to have some sympathy towards renewable resources, maintainability and sustainability of products. Over the past 10 to 15 years, the ARB has allowed cement fiber siding in lieu of wood. We have allowed PVC composite materials in lieu of wood. We've allowed decking materials that are a synthetic material, even porch floor tongue and groove materials that are synthetic and not prone to rot. The logic of those approvals was that they look very, very similar to the products that we typically see within the town. There are some slight differences between a cement fiber siding and a wood siding, but it's getting difficult to find any wood siding other than cedar. And the cedar is getting thinner in profile. It used to be almost 3/4 of an inch thick. It's down to a little bit less than a 1/2 inch now. And the cement fiber is also. So the reveal from old wood siding is less, but if you were trying to put wood siding on a house now, you would have a hard time finding that old wood siding. There's another product, the brand name is Boral, they use a fly ash as opposed to cement fiber in their mix. And they actually come up with what's called a Dutch lap, which there are a couple of structures in town that have that type of siding. So materials are becoming available that weren't available in 1997 when these when the guidelines were initially written. So I'm going to put together more information, and we're going to have more discussion at the ARB with the goal of trying to allow a more sustainable type product when it comes to windows and doors without sacrificing the architectural quality and character of the existing structures in town. So that was an interesting discussion, and any feedback from any council members is welcome. The last issue that we discussed was something that's been discussed in the past, I think starting in October, and it has to do with signage. We talked about personal message signs, political signs, signs. Everywhere you look, there's signs. And we kind of let it slide. It was approaching the election, and they had, I think it was 7 days after the election, and then it was getting towards Christmas, and everybody's got COVID fatigue, and who wants to start battles when, you know, that stuff's going on. But now we've determined that, okay, it's gone on for pushing 6 months. It's probably time that we enforce the code if we're going to have a code. So the ARB is going to send letters to, I know of 4 properties in town that have signage in residential districts that's not allowed by code. They have not submitted an application to the ARB for that signage. And if they did, the ARB would not be able to approve it because it's in a residential district. And ask these owners to remove those signs. We will submit the section of the code that it applies to. And if they don't remove it, then we will request that the town council issue a violation or fines or whatever the town council deems appropriate. So those letters will be going out potentially this week, next week at the very latest. So those are the only issues that we discussed at the town or at the ARB meeting.
Based on that last item that you mentioned, I know as somebody who's only been around for a little over 3 years in Clifton, it's not always clear what all the rules and regulations and procedures might be, coming into town. So I'm interested in the process, really. Certainly sending the letters out to inform them. But I'm curious about any sort of communication that goes out to members of town in general about this type of ordinance, so that it's, yes, you're targeting individual because you see something that is in violation, but is there any sort of a communication or an educational platform to be able to put that message out?
I can say that on the town website, there's a section, I don't think it's highly trafficked, but there's a whole section on the website called FAQ. Mm-hmm. And it's written in really plain, understandable language. Mm-hmm. And it talks a lot about all manner of subjects for anyone who's new to town, or anyone who's been in town and just hasn't contemplated a construction project or putting up a sign or anything like that. So if you want, I can send you a link to that. Probably there's a way to make it a little more prominent on the home page. I can look into that. So that's one way. The town code is published really prominently on the website. Yeah. So definitely I've gotten a surprising number of inquiries from people who do take the time to get on there and look.
Yeah.
And I think definitely word of mouth is pretty powerful. That's probably what I've heard most of all, in addition to whatever Royce was just about to say.
Well, what I was going to say is most of the signs that we have in town are related to commercial properties.
Mm.
And most businesses understand that signage needs to be approved. And there are a number of times when a new business moves to town and puts up their sign and is all proud and ready to start work. And we send them a letter, and it's not terribly aggressive, but it lets them know that there is a sign ordinance, tells them where they can find it if we don't send them a copy of it, and that their sign has not been approved and that they need to submit an application for approval. There's not very many signs that get denied. In the number of years that I've been on the board, I'll bet it's less than 5. And that's usually either because of size, or there was a period of time where somebody was doing their hand painted signs and they weren't very good at it. So we asked that be cleaned up a little bit. But it's usually the amount of signage that's the issue, or the fact that they put up the sign and did not have approval for it. So we let them know that, hey, we noticed your sign. Please submit an application, because we don't have an application on our record. So they submit an application. They don't get their hand slapped. They pay the whopping $10 fee, and we review it. They're welcome to be at the meeting. We actually request that they're at the meeting. So if there's any questions, they can be there to answer them. And it doesn't take very long. Most of our ARB meetings are less than a half an hour. So it's there's not an official welcome to town, here's everything you need to know. But the information is readily available for those who may want to know. And if they do something they're not supposed to, we kindly advise them that they need to do something different.
Thank you.
Royce, I have 2 questions, going back to your first set of comments. First, would you clarify for me the architectural review board stuff that Jim originally wrote and that you're looking at now after this many years? Is that simply adopted by the architectural review board, or is it adopted by the town council? And is it reviewable by the town, or is this entire thing done by the architectural review board?
It was developed by the architectural review board and approved and adopted by the town of Clifton in 1997.
So if you went through a process of redoing this stuff or re-looking at it, giving yourself more latitude to look at these issues, that would come back to the town council and we would go through the process of approving it again? Is that correct?
That would be my goal, yes.
I see. And can you define for me what architectural character means? I look at this, some of the rules seem to apply to anything that is within 25 feet of a road. I remember when we went through the whole Trex issue of the deck, the building of a deck, and the siding issue. I remember that too. And we finally got to the point, it seemed to me, of saying, look, if you can't see the difference, I mean, I'm not sure what architectural character means, but if you can't see the difference, I don't care what the composition of the wood is or the material or anything else. If it is consistent with the character of the building and the rest of the town, why should we care?
Well, here's an example. And I remember it had to do with a project that I was doing. It was the Hetzel house that I built I tore that house down and I built Marcus Silva's house there, corner of Pendleton and Chapel Road. The house was not salvageable because it was infested with termites and just plain rot. The roof had blown off when Hurricane Isabel went through, and
Yeah, it had to be torn down. Okay.
5 years later, Marcus bought it and there was no chance. So when I was presenting the new design, the ARB required us to build the same footprint of the existing Hetzel house, the same elevation, same size and scale, but with an addition off to one side in the rear. And at the time, Mac Arnold made a comment that I thought he was spot on. He was a council member at the time. And he said, even though you might build an exact replica of that house, it won't have the patina that a house over 100 years old will have. In other words, the old chip paint that's been repainted,
Yep.
windows that aren't clear, just the flaws of time that every house incurs. So he had a good point. The house that I live in, there's parts of this house that can't be seen from Chapel Road, or even if you're coming from School Street and Water Street, where you can see through my backyard. I think that the windows on the back of my house and probably on the side facing the McNamara's old house could be aluminum clad and no one would know the difference. But the windows in the front would probably be something that you would say, that house looks a little too clean. It doesn't look like it's 100 and I forget, I think it's 150. Yeah, 150.
Are you saying to me that architectural character means that we have to have houses that look 100 years old?
No, I'm not saying that, but if you take
I'm confused, because if I have a window in the front of a house and you can't tell the difference between whether it's a vinyl window or a wood window, but one is clean and the old wood window was dirty, is that what we're talking about in terms of architectural character?
Well, you're making it a little more simple than it actually is, because I can tell you if a window is a vinyl window or a wood window from 35 feet by just looking at it. I don't even have to walk up and touch it. And anybody that's got a keen eye for architecture, especially of the historic nature, would be able to tell the same thing.
Okay, so the definition, and I don't want to continue this now. We don't have time for this, and I will be very interested, and I would appreciate you notifying me about your next meeting if you're going to talk about this. But if the issue here has now gotten to the point where we are writing rules or applying rules based on the eye of an architect as opposed to the average person, I think we've got a problem.
Well, I'm sorry.
I think one of the things I'm hearing is that there are companies out there that are designing sustainable materials that look like they are of historic character. In other words, it's not just random new stuff where we go, you know, that looks okay to me. It's something where a company spent a lot of time saying, how can I use sustainable materials to make something that looks like it is of appropriate historic character? Is that what's going on, Royce?
That's exactly what's going on, because there are two windows that we discussed in our last meeting. The brand names was the Windsor Legend, which is a PVC composite material on the outside. Now it's got the insulated glass, the simulated divided lights. It's got all the new components that windows are being sold with today. But what it does do is it has a simple detail. The cross section of the jambs and the head are very, very similar to wood windows in its dimension and character. Whereas if you go to a vinyl window or the extruded aluminum clad window, what you will see is a more curves and molded type detail. And it's because the aluminum clad stands up better if it has more bends and corners as opposed to just flat. The other window, and this is a window that has been approved in some cases in Old Town, is a Marvin Infinity. And that is a fiberglass window, which is reported to be better than vinyl because the vinyl over time gets brittle and discolors. And when it gets brittle, it starts to crack. And so there's some maintenance issues. So those are just two that we talked about. But what you said, Bill, is exactly what's happened. Is over the last 20 to 25 years, manufacturers have come into districts like ours and they can't sell their product because it's not approvable. So they have done considerable amount of work to come up with products that are a better facsimile of the historic nature of our components. The common eye is important because when Clifton was put on as a historic district, there were contributing structures that added to that. If there weren't enough of the contributing structures, we would not have received that designation. And if we take these buildings and we change them to more modern components, we could lose that designation if somebody wanted to press that issue. It's not something I've talked with Richmond, Old Town, Waterford, and Leesburg. Those four, they're fairly local. None of them allow just replace it with whatever you want. Not any of them. Some of them, depending on the age of the building, won't let you replace the window at all. They want you to reconstruct it. And the cost of that is out of the stratosphere.
That's amazing. Well, it sounds like you're taking on some very important initiatives, and you put a lot of work into it. I think we do have requirements that are old. 1997, that's like the Stone Age, although it sounds like yesterday.
I thought the same thing.
Some of us. Funny, but it has been a long time. So it's time, and I for one, appreciate all the effort that you're putting in, you and the ARB, into looking into this, and we'll look at it. We'll look at it when it comes before us, and I think it's great to bring it to the council. The idea being that the community is ultimately on board with where we're going.
I don't think it is strictly an ARB issue. I think the town council should be part of it because it's a fairly major change to take a guideline that says windows must be wood, doors must be wood, and say, well, maybe not. I would like to make some headway into a more sustainable product. And in the next 25 years, I would imagine manufacturers will be even better. And potentially we would be able to replace a window in the front of an older home. And you might not be able to tell unless you walk up and tap on it. So that's my goal, is not to rewrite the guidelines, but just to try to get a little more current with what can be done and can't be done.
Good. Okay, moving on. Are we out of committees? Any more committee stuff?
That's it for me.
Thank you, and really appreciate your contributing so much and filling us in on everything that's going on in the ARB. It's a very, very important part of the community. So I appreciate the work you and the members of the Architectural Review Board are doing.
Thank you.
Natural landscaping resolution. We've had this on the agenda many times, and one of the benefits, frankly, of that is that this is an issue that's been talked about and been looked at and been reviewed. So now by the time it is up here, it's been through review, it's been looked at, it's been revised, it's been made Clifton specific, and it should be understood and reasonably, it should be understood, non-controversial, and ready to go, because we have spent so much time looking at it in the past. So all of you have been sent a revised draft dated December 30, 2020. I took the red line and accepted the changes, so it was clean. It looked kind of strange in red line. And, you know, it says in essence, when we start pulling out plants and we put in new ones, that we're going to look at using natural landscaping, which means not invasive stuff. And if we do new plantings, we're going to look at doing natural landscaping, sustainable landscaping. During the lengthy gestation of our review of this resolution, this issue is in fact taken off, and the county's now adopted it, and the state legislature is actually looking at it, at adopting new statutes that grab some of this. So by the time we get around to doing this, we may be behind the curve instead of ahead of the curve. But if we approve it tonight, we'll still be ahead of the curve, which is good. So that's the natural landscaping resolution that the town would pass. Are there questions, discussion about it? Okay, I will make a motion to approve the adoption of the natural landscaping resolution, the clean version of what was sent out on December 30th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. And I will note as part of discussion that if we adopt this, this means, of course, we're going to implement it. And the implementation has been written up to be Clifton style. It's a little passive. It means when we do something, we will take this into account. When we replace things, we will take this into account. So this isn't written by intent. This is not written to say we are going tomorrow to remove all plants in the town and replace them with other plants. It will be done over time as we do things. So, but the point is, this isn't just, oh, isn't it, we love butterflies. This is actually something that will be active, that will be implemented by the town going forward. We're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion to adopt the resolution?
Aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions? Okay, we're in the natural landscaping revolution. And I think it'd be a good thing. It's a great thing for the town, and it's the kind of thing we should be doing to take us back. There may be fiberglass plants that look just like natural plants that we can use. I don't know. That's something I'll probably ask Royce to look at. But the idea is to go back to the original kind of non-invasive plants and native plants in Clifton. So a good thing, right thing. And Laura McDonald, thank you so much. You're surely here in spirit, listening to the love and the outpouring that we have for all the hard work that you and the team did on this. I think Laura is actually not here, but she's here in spirit.
Laura is watching on the YouTube feed, so she is listening to you, Bill.
She is. Well, that's great. Well, thank you. All your hard work is well worth it, and we'll be off and on to the next thing and we can't wait to do some native planting. On to other business signs, talking about signs. The first one is replacement of the Devereaux Station sign that was hit by a truck and destroyed and needs to be recast in aluminum and replaced in a better location. Reagan, you had been looking into that update?
Yes. Getting a echo for someone. Yeah, on the damage, I've looked at this with the natural resources, historical resources, part of the state. They are ready to accept our proposal to get it replaced. It's really just an application. There's two costs, one to replace the sign, one to have it installed. They suggested that VDOT might be able to install it, so I checked with VDOT. The location of our sign is out of the right of way, so it would not be something that we could get VDOT to do. And I think that we want to keep it in proximity to where it was originally located, but put it in a safer location that won't get hit by a trash truck or somebody backing into it, whatever happened there. So the cost of replacement with installation is $1,945. And they do have an entity that does the highway signage and marking that will install that. So we just need to submit the application. The state has confirmed that the text, the language on the sign is fine. I also ran it by the history committee, and Margot takes no exception to putting back up what was previously there. So at this point, I guess it's a decision of getting approval from the town council to submit this form, acknowledging that we'll have a cost of about $1,945.
Well, we should get it done. We should approve it. I don't know which line item it comes out of. This is not a thing that we had planned on, obviously. I think we could consider an insurance claim, although I don't know what extent that would be worthwhile, but perhaps it's something to look at. But whether we have an insurance claim or we don't, we still need to put the sign back up. That's my view.
Do we have any deductible, Bill? Do you know?
I don't know anything about it. Who's the VML person these days?
I'd have to check. I can't remember who we assigned after Melissa.
Okay.
I'd be glad to look into it, though. It's just should be just a phone call.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Somebody, you mentioned it, Reagan, we have to make sure that it's positioned away from the backing up of the dumpster truck, because apparently that's what hit it.
Yeah, I've heard that's a possibility. But yeah, we will look for a spot that's out of the way, but still in proximity of the caboose and the old depot building.
Can we mount it to the caboose and save some of the installation signs costs?
My guess is, I don't know what that sign weigh. What does it weigh? 50 pounds or something?
Nah, it's probably more than that. I hefted it up into the caboose to secure it, but
so
by
my
myself,
point
it
is,
wasn't easy. Yeah.
By the time you monkey around trying to attach it to the caboose, it's probably just as easy to put it on the stick, is my guess. I don't know what the incremental delta is on the cost, Reagan. The installation piece.
Yeah, we'd have to drill it
$500.
We'd have to drill it into the caboose and all that. So
yeah, and I very much appreciate, Pat, the idea of trying to look for ways to save money, but in this case, I think we just have to bite the bullet and put it back up properly. And you know, it's $2,000, so it's not $20,000, thankfully. And if we put it up in the right place, I mean, that thing was up there for 20 years or something, wasn't it? So if we put it up in the right place, it ought to be up there for decades, many more decades.
So I had the split here. I think the cost of the sign was 600 and something by itself.
And the installation's 1,400?
Yeah, it's in that range. They've got to dig it. You know, the signpost there is probably about a 6-inch steel post that has to be sunk with concrete, et cetera. Now we
Yeah.
could see if
Wow.
if somebody local would want to do that, and see if we could save that way while the sign is being manufactured. We can check into that, Pat, and see if there's somebody that would do it.
Yeah, because the lead time on that sign is probably a long time, right?
I think it's at least a couple months. They're cast out in Ohio someplace. There's a contract in place where they do that.
So is that what we want to do? Just approve making the sign, but not approve installing the sign?
I recommend at this point we approve up to the cost of getting them to do it in case everything else falls through. But I will check with some contractors to see if we can get somebody to pop it up. And I'll also confirm that it comes with everything that we would need, with the post and the hardware to attach it, et cetera.
Well, and that it would all be done, right?
Well, if we could purchase it and get it and have it installed by a contractor, I want to make sure that we get a complete kit and that there's not an assumption that we would get a signpost and everything if we just purchase the sign. I want to make sure the one that we have is not usable. It's bent over, and we would not be able to straighten that.
Hey, who takes the old one out? Would they do that?
That would be part of my ask.
Yeah,
So
I
that
agree.
would have to be probably just cut off and then filled in
Yeah.
with concrete. I don't want to excavate it out of the
Agreed.
the brickwork.
All they
there.
need's a cutter. They cut it off and they dump some concrete in the little hole.
Yeah.
I would include that.
If need be, I could cut it off with a chop saw and a metal blade.
And do you think 2,000 is enough?
According to the application, that should suffice. That's the amount that's printed on the application that we need to fill in and return.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the expenditure of up to $2,200 to replace the Devereaux station, replace and install a new sign for Devereaux Station.
I'll second.
Second, go ahead.
All right, and just discussion wise, sorry about the awkwardness of the language of the motion. You get the idea. I don't want it to turn out to be $2,020 and you have to come back. So we understand it's 1945, but you got enough leeway in case something silly happens with some, clips or who knows what, right? Okay, motion a second. Any further discussion? We'll do a roll call vote. Holloway, aye.
F. Ross, aye.
McDonald, aye.
Line I.
Green eye.
All right, good. And if you can get someone else to do it for less or whatever, find out. You might check with Wayne. I don't know. Wayne used to do this kind of stuff all the time. So I know he put the sign up in front of my house back when I lived on Chapel Street, because I convinced him that I couldn't handle the post hole digger myself, that I was mystified by its operation. So he grabbed it on my hands and put the thing in. It was classic. I'll never forget. It was really, really funny. And by the way, to get it, he didn't have the post hole digger. So the way he got it was by yelling, "Charlie, Charlie, Charlie," really, really loud, repeatedly. And then a young lad came over with the post hole digger. So that's my sign installation. Wayne is your guy. But if not, we've got it covered. By the way, that reminds me of signs. We need to look at a Wayne Nickham sign. We'll have to work on that. And that transitions us to, this is just an update. Harriet and William Harris Park sign. Look, I'm a big transparency guy. I want people to know what's going on. We've been working with the history committee for I don't know, 3 or 4 months on wording for the sign, and it's coming along. We had this long wording, and we did run it past the Racial Justice Committee. We wanted to get their input, and they gave us some input. One was on currently preferred terminology. Okay, cool. And the other one was your sign's way too long. And the reason is that we had the whole Beckwith and all his children thing. And then we had Harriet and William. So in light of what we heard from the Racial Justice Committee, the wording was revised and also focused the sign on Harriet and William Harris, which is appropriate for the park. What that meant was the whole Beckwith part got lifted out. And our view is that we probably would want a second sign that would talk about Beckwith and the will and the family. And the idea perhaps of one sign facing Main Street and another sign facing Chapel Street. So that's just looking down the road, so people know where we're going. But to start with, it would be just the Harriet and William Harris sign, focused on them, with input from Racial Justice that we got, and distilled it down to something that's very focused. So you guys saw part of the sausage making of the longer sign, and we will come back with the tightened, reviewed, focused sign for the council's review and approval probably next month. So that's just a heads up on what's going on. Lots of work's been done on it, and it's going to be a really good thing. And there will be appropriate images and things. When you look at the Civil War trail markers that we put in, the way there are a number of images as well as wording. And I have to tell you, the Civil War trail markers, we get a tremendous amount of people each and every day that come by and read those. So they're well put together with the content. And that was a very wise thing of the town to do, to put those in. They've really paid off. And these types of signs would do the same thing with a different part of our history. So that's the update.
Or do you anticipate that structurally they would look like the Civil War signs?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
I do. Same structure, same size. I think that's worked out really well. And that's a proven approach. You know, they're kind of low, so they're not like in your face. You look down at them, and they're observable by people who might be vertically challenged, or whatever the appropriate term would be. But the same type of sign. Yeah, that's exactly it. Same size, same model, and we're looking at that for the way that's been laid out, that's been so effective. And we took the Racial Justice Committee's input on the amount of material, and we looked at how much material was in those Civil War trail signs as well. So yes, a template, if you will. So that's the update on that, and just a short update that we'd ultimately look at doing something similar for Wayne Nickham Town Hall at some point. But let's keep it one step at a time. Let's get Harriet and William Harris done first. And the final point I'll make about signs, I don't know if any of you noticed, but a car ran into our town sign. In case you guys missed that. Did all of you see that?
You mean the one at the triangle?
Yes. Are you aware of that, Steve? Have you seen it? Yeah, it's one of those crazy cars, super fast, a Prius. Those Prius people, wow, I don't know. But anyway, they literally drove right through the middle of the sign. They obliterated the sign. It's incredible. And all the stonework, all the plantings, they're like, it's shocking. First of all, a shout out to the community, because the community alerted me to this almost immediately, and I was on the scene almost right after, and Reagan was on the scene right after I was on the scene. And so the whole Facebook page and all that was very, very helpful in providing information to get us started. So I just want to say hats off. There you go. Hats off to them. And one of the things we said to the community was, does anyone, we can't read the license plate. Can anyone help us with that? And within 30 minutes, we had this giant picture of the license plate of the car as well. But in any event,
When did this happen?
this happened Saturday at 1:45 p.m.
So just as an update on that, Bill, there's a claim is open with the driver's insurance company. The adjuster chose not to come out until we have an estimate. So Jerry and Susan are helping collect an estimate, trying to reach the contractor that installed this in 2014. And we've already been in touch with Blair regarding the sign specifically. So I'm hoping that within a few days, we may have to reach out to another contractor or two if we don't get a response from the folks that installed it. But I'd like to have an estimate back within a week or two, if at all possible, for both pieces, the sign and then the landscaping.
For the adjuster. So I'll point out that I immediately reached out to Fairfax County Police Department, and what we found ultimately was I got in touch with the officer who was on the scene and met the officer the next day, who provided information to me that I provided to Reagan, who worked with the insurance company. So we've worked really seamlessly to move forward instead of fretting about it. But interestingly, this is also hats off to Fairfax County Police Department. The officers were conferring amongst themselves at the Masonic Lodge at the time. Two officers were there, and they said they heard this, terrific crash, and looked over his shoulder, and there was a car in the air in the middle of the sun. So, he was right there. Incredibly helpful, Officer Roble, wonderful, very helpful, very professional. And we took the step of making sure that, the driver, I think, had a broken nose from the airbag, but otherwise survived without other injuries, which is good. Hopefully this will be a lesson learned for the future for the driver, and our focus will be getting the sign repaired and letting Fairfax County Police handle the prosecution of the ticket and the court date, I think in August for the driver. But really, my hope is always that in this kind of situation that perhaps it'll be a wake-up call for the driver and maybe for others, and our focus will be on getting the sign repaired, because you can imagine there was huge outrage on behalf of the community. But let's focus on getting the sign fixed, and Reagan's been doing a terrific job pushing that forward after I got all the information, and like I say, the police worked with us. So a good illustration of how the community can work together and how the process works when something like this happens. Because it was really, honestly, my first reaction, I was just shocked. I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. It's like the things where they run over the stop sign. I mean, this one, they just took the sign out. It like, you'd have to work pretty hard to do that. But to, again, work on moving forward. So I just wanted to alert everybody, because you'll see that and go, oh my gosh, what's going on? What are you going to do? And I think one of the community members was calling around to find out information. We're handling it. It's being taken care of. but we really appreciate all the input that the community provided. So any further questions, discussion on that? And I really like what happened here in terms of, instead of, you know, who to blame and pointing fingers and being outraged, but rather, you know, let's focus on an accident happened, let's get it fixed and let's move on. So very good in the way to conduct business on behalf of the community and keep the community pointed in a positive way and moving forward.
I do have one question. And I haven't seen any of the conversation on Facebook, but I'm curious if with your conversation with the police, there was any talk about the fact that there tend to be signs taken out in that area often. I mean, the stop sign has gone down recently, and any sort of traffic calming that might need to be done. I imagine this has been going on for years, and the rumble strips and the speed limit change signs. So I don't mean to open a can of worms, but
no, and the funny thing is the police don't do traffic calming. So they handle the people running over the signs, and then VDOT has to come out and stick new signs up, not our sign. And so perhaps VDOT would say, we're tired of putting up new signs, maybe we should do something else. There were, don't we have rumble strips coming into town, or did we not? Yep.
Yeah, we have rumble strips there. We also, you know, the other thing that I try to pay attention to are street lights that are in op. Obviously, that wasn't an issue in broad daylight up for this specific reason, but if you see a street light out, let me know or report it. Incidentally, street lighting goes to the county, and they have a website that you can actually specify exactly which light is out on the street, and they're all numbered, and it's very specific. And they come by within a day or two with a bucket truck, and they'll switch out the bulb or the ballast or whatever need be. So they're very responsive on that. Lighting is a big issue.
You know what might really help there? You know the Jim Chesley speed signs going up towards Dell? And those things are old. Like Jim got those like 20 years ago. We finally put them up. So they're even like higher tech today. Honestly, like coming down Dell, it's kind of hard to get up to 50 miles an hour. I try, but I can't. But coming down Clifton Road, people are going, it's 45, they're doing 55. And if they're from Maryland and they don't know the area, they're still doing 55 when they go, oh, uh-oh, that's a problem. So it goes 45, 35, 25. If where it hits 25, if you had one of those little flashy guys, and we've got one here where I am right now, where it's 25, it's literally 45, 35, 25. So just like in Clifton. And when it hits 25, it's got this sign that goes, too fast, too fast. I'm like, I'm going 27. What's the problem? But it's too fast. So I'm like, uh-oh, I better get down there because I don't like it yelling at me. That kind of thing really gets your attention. Reagan, we should think about that from a VDOT perspective. I think, like, I'm not sure about Dell. Like, I like those things. They're cool. They get my attention. But I think on the coming in from the other side, that might actually make a difference because it's the people who are distracted driving, not paying attention. So having the flashy thing might make a big difference because if they get down to 25, they'll be able to stop when they get down there.
Yep.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, we can run it by them and see. Key there would be to have a power source that's close by.
Yeah.
The one on Dell comes right off the power pole there. I'd have to check and see.
The sign by the school, by the old school, I think was powered. So you could bring it right out from there instead of where the 25-mile-an-hour zone is. You bring it a little farther back, which is where the rumble strips start anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have power right then.
I really like that idea. Coming off of Lynn's, like, you know, I've been here 3 years. How come people keep running into our things? And those of us who've been around a while go, you know, they just run over the signs. It's how it is. But maybe with fresh ideas of what can we do, I really do think The problem's not those of us who've been there 1,000 times, because in our mind, we know you slow down and, you know, the officers are always there in the little gravel. And so I always slow down to make sure they're not going to get me. It's all like in my brain now. It's the people who come to town who aren't from around here that don't know. And they're the ones, and the police officer told me, Lynn, they go flying off into the field. This happens on a regular basis as well. It's get their attention. And that's the way. I think that would be much better than speed humps or rumble strips, which we already have, as a way to just visually get your attention and make you go, oh, wow, it's 25. A good idea.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too. And Lynn, the other side of that is that I suspect the last time we lost 2 signs, not the Clifton sign, but the stop signs, those were intentionally hit. That wasn't an accident. Somebody came around and went on the triangle and actually hit them because they wanted to hit them.
Okay, so good ideas. We should look into that. Reagan, VDOT, think about that. And there's something where, you know, I think we could look for sources of funding. I know they're not inexpensive, but it would be important there, and something where the expenditure of whoever's putting the money in would be worthwhile, and even more worthwhile if someone else puts the money in. Okay, that's all we have on the agenda, unless there's anything anyone wants to add. Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, motion a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. All right. Good night, good night. Good
night,
meeting.
everybody.
Thank you.
We'll
Take care, all.
All
talk
right.
soon.
We are alone.